to Wild and Weird Radio, a Wild and Weird West Virginia podcast.
Possessions. Over the years, Hollywood has made a point of using this controversial subject in the most horrific ways possible to fill box offices. However, some say the subject is not as black and white as the public has been led to believe, and that anyone may be susceptible to such effects. They point out not only to horrific demon possessions, which most think of when they hear of the term, but rather different, less serious forms, including the frequently talked about attachments and hitchhiker phenomena, where some intelligent entity or force is said to follow the individual's home. Author and paranormal investigator Dave Spinks joins us to discuss different examples of the phenomena and look at ways of how you can deal with and protect yourself from possessions and attachments in this episode of Wild and Weird Radio.
Welcome back to Wild and Weird Radio, everybody. I'm Joe, one of your hosts, and I'm joined by the lovely Jessie Lee and the just okay Ron Lanham. And we are going to be diving into the super cheery topic of possessions tonight. So hang in there. This one's going to be kind of dark, but there's actually going to be a whole lot of information. So you guys, this will be a really valuable episode, and we'll probably be listened to a bajillion times just because we know how faithful our listeners are. All three of you are going to listen to these like however many times it takes to get rid to a bajillion. But how's everybody doing?
Doing good. Doing
great. Had a really crazy night last night in the field. We were out all day yesterday and all night last night, and we had a lot of crazy stuff happen. And I'm in the process of editing the video now. I am hopefully going to have that out by the time this airs. Nice. And yeah, it's a doozy.
If it's wrapped up, we'll definitely link it into the description here on the podcast, because everything that we've spoken about previously, I personally can't wait to watch it, and I already know some of the stuff that's in it.
Jeff, did you catch us any orbs for next week's big orb special?
I don't know. There were some lights, but we can't quite figure out what that was. It was like, it wasn't like the orbs like we've seen them that are like they're about the size of a car headlight. But we were seeing like pinprick lights in the woods, so we're not sure exactly what we were getting.
That's interesting.
The jury is still out on the status of the orbs of last night.
Well, while we've been doing some research on the orbs, you guys who are listening, if you have had any experience with orbs that you would like to share, please send those in to us. You can hit us up at wildandweirdwv@gmail.com, or can send them to us over on Facebook or Instagram. You can find me at Skinwalker Sculpts on Instagram. Jesse is Hellbent Jesse on Instagram. Ronham is Lanham Ron on Instagram. You can shoot us out any kind of data that you've got, because we're still scrapping some stuff together for it, and it is shaping up to be a fantastic show.
Yep, it's going to be a good show.
So let's go ahead and dive into the news, because quite honestly, I don't want to really a whole bunch. This
Wasn't
is
a lot
first week of the year that is not like cram-packed with fun stuff.
No, there's a couple of good pieces, but they came in late, didn't they? Really?
They did.
Go ahead.
So the first one that really grabbed my attention was we got this one on February 2nd, and it was sent in by Dandy Lynn, one of the Wild and Weird field correspondents. And this is from nature.com. The first sun dimming experiment will test a way to cool the earth. Now, some would argue in the conspiracy community that this is not the first sun dimming experiment wouldn't they, Ron?
I suppose. I mean, there's a lot of conspiracy theories when it comes to this stuff. So, what's it actually going to be? I don't know, man. I can't tell you.
Well, I can tell you what this specific one says it's going to be, and it sounds like basically every other theory that's been thrown out there since the mid 90s or earlier.
Right.
And it is that researchers plan to spray sunlight reflecting particles into the stratosphere. We've heard all this before.
We've heard all this before. I used to talk about it all the time, I believe, back when we were doing the some of the HARP stuff that I had studied back in the day, weather modifications and whatnot. It's really an old thing, man. I mean, this is another one of those instances where, look, it's new again.
The reason that it caught my attention was solely because they said it was new, and I knew that our listeners, the majority of them, would be familiar with some of these topics and be like, I don't know about new. That doesn't sound quite right to me.
The old school enthusiasts are going to catch on and be like, this isn't new. They know this has been done before,
Would so say they were successful in that kind of experiment, would that affect food production in terms of like crop failure and everything like that because you don't have as much sunlight?
Theoretically,
it could go either way.
Mm-hmm, yeah. Right.
Really. Some crops are being damaged currently because the nature of our planet is that we're in a constant state of flux.
Right.
So, some of these regions that used to be perfect for growing a specific crop are no longer perfect for growing that specific crop, no matter what kind of scientific terminology you want to use, whether you're using cyclical climate change, global warming, whatever, one way or another, this region is no longer good at producing crop A, but is now good at producing crop B.
Right.
So if we do this, it could bring back crop A in certain regions, or it could actually make it not so great for crop B that's currently being grown there.
Right.
So you are going to see these shifts most likely across the agricultural, community.
And if you want to put your Alex Jones hat on, you can always go, this is just a part of the globalist agenda to have depopulation. They're going to starve people, and it's all over.
Yes, you're right. You're absolutely right. And that's the other side of the coin, right? I mean,
yeah.
So, but somewhere in between that lies the truth, I guess. And, I don't know. Something's definitely going on as far as that goes, but who knows what it is. I mean, I think that, may just be the aliens terraforming Earth. I don't know.
Now, a good friend of ours, our buddy Bill Lancaster, Darth Bill, Larry, Fred, George, whatever you choose to call him today.
Many names.
He posted up a really interesting article it was actually a YouTube video, and it was documenting Neil Armstrong's search for an ancient library in the Amazon. Now, I didn't watch the entire video. I'm not going to lie to you guys. But what I did watch was pretty interesting. But my ADD brain was like squirrel, and off I went on to another project because I only have 1,000 things to do. And so I got distracted. But it was pretty interesting because he was hunting for a rumored lost library in the Amazon and never found it. But there's been so much speculation about different things that have been lost in the Amazon, from ancient libraries to, Hitler's treasures and all kinds of other craziness. But they've actually found some links to the Nazi movement, bringing all of their treasures and stuff into places like Argentina. Because there was a guy that died a couple years ago that we covered actually on the show during one of our little news segments way back, where when he passed away, they found this entire cache of Nazi regalia and not ancient, but missing art and whatnot that had been stolen by the Nazis were in his basement. Now, Ron, you posted up a good one that's been making its rounds.
Which one? I'll go with the Tesla bot thing because I think that's pretty newsworthy. And I'm just going to read what he said, and this isn't speculation. You guys can go with it how you want. In terms of the priority of product, I think the most important product development we're doing this year actually is the Optimus humanoid robot. He goes on to say, if you think about the economy, the foundation of the economy is labor. And pay attention to that part, okay? Capital equipment is distilled labor. So what happens if you don't actually have a labor shortage? I'm not sure what an economy even means at that point. So what we basically see here, Joseph, is if people aren't going to do their jobs, they're going to be replaced by robots.
Not just any robots, Optimus
Optimus.
robots.
So
So
this goes
can I
back to
just
what you
name mine
said
Prime?
last.
I'm going to buy one and I want to
Okay.
call it Optimus Prime.
Go
Because what
ahead.
that'll do
That's
is it
fine.
will pit Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos against one another
Yeah.
in one entity.
Okay, that works. So my big thing is what we talked about last week, as far as that goes. Um, you see the rush; it is there. He admitted to the rush. We have it this week. That's exactly what we were kind of saying. Is like he needs this robot army, if you will, and it has to be presented as safe.
Yep.
But here's these robots. I'm telling you, this is going to be a real issue in the future, a very big issue in the future.
A lot quicker than we expected
Yes.
it to be.
Yes,
Yeah,
Jesse. Yes.
definitely.
But
Yes.
on the plus side, there's a possibility that my house might actually be clean one day.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Phil, go ahead and take us to the last news story, Joe. That would be the Chris Mellon thing.
Oh, I was about to say something about that. I was like, "Do you guys hear about the Chris Mellon thing?"
Yeah.
Go for it, because
So Chris Mellon, who was
Go
he's
ahead.
a former he's a former higher up in intelligence. He worked for the Bush administration, I believe.
he was the defense secretary.
Assistant defense secretary, or yeah. So he's obviously somebody high up. He's a member of one of the most elite families in the United States. He knows things. He's one of the elite, and this is confirmed. He came out and said that based on what we know, aliens are the best likely explanation for the UFO and UAP phenomenon. And for somebody to come out that is not that is not considered a crackpot or just somebody theorizing or anything like that. This is an official person coming out and saying this is the best explanation for what is going on. So this is a huge, huge deal.
This was a very big deal. And if you watch the reporters, I mean, it is great to watch this interview. Please watch the interview. If you have any mild interest in the subject of, the UAP thing, the alien things, watch the interview. Watch the reporters, watch their reactions, and watch how desperate they are to try to get him to admit that this is not aliens.
But then when he says it is, they're kind of like, oh, well. But now the one thing I have to say is the lead anchor on this, she is like, she knows her stuff.
She does know her stuff.
Because
she really did.
When she sees that he's actually answering these questions, she brightens up and she gets this smile on her face. Like, I'm gonna ask the questions I want to ask now. And she starts really getting some good questions.
Well,
and
he even says maybe you need to go and question Congress.
Yeah.
I love that part.
And so
good look there.
Right. So my favorite part of this interview, I'm a huge student of watching body language and understanding people's behaviors. I know it's technically like a pseudoscience, but there's a lot that people give away when they talk. And that's why people can pick up and, lead you into some kind of a scam because they know your body language. It's called a cold read. So like, I'm really good at doing a cold read. And he didn't even try. I'll just say that. He didn't even try to act stoic. There was one part during his questioning when they asked him about why it's all the Navy and not the Air Force is reporting all these things, because the Air Force has so much air superiority. And that we have so much technology in the sky that, I can 100% attest to. Why aren't we reporting these things? Well, when she starts asking him, do you think the Air Force really has all these documentation and all these records of UFOs and all that? She's going through like this 10-second ramble of different types of records that the Air Force could have. He is sitting there doing this.
Mm-hmm.
He's not opening his mouth. He's not saying anything, but he is shaking his head up and down vigorously and smiling like, oh, yeah, they do. And I just can't wait until the Air Force is forced to admit some of the toys that they have and how they've been able to detect things and the stuff that they've detected with them.
It's going to be interesting, and I really think, I look forward to every Monday morning. It's like we get this. There's always a cool news story,
Yeah.
isn't there? And
Yeah.
it's been like that for like months now. So I almost just can't wait to see what it is tomorrow morning. We're going to wake up eventually one morning, and they're going to be like, "Ah, we found the signal." I really do believe that's coming.
But
Right.
the big one is gonna drop on a Friday. They always drop the ones they
That's
want to
true.
disappear on a Friday. So
Friday night. It's
yep,
Good
those
about
point.
Friday night news
That's a
stories
good
are the
point.
ones to pay attention to.
That's a good point, Chad. Well, guys, that is the news this week, and we're going to go ahead, I guess, and get our guest on here, Joe. So go ahead and do that. We have a special guest for this episode who will be joining us to discuss these spooky and dark things, I should say, right?
Oh yeah.
Because I personally, I've done, I've done a lot of research, and I've been on investigations and whatnot. But this is something I have not dealt with. I do know people who have had this happen to them, other researchers, and one of them was actually a good friend of ours, Dave Roberts, who did have an issue with that. But we're going to have Dave Spinks, author and researcher and investigator and all around good guy, to come on and tell us his take on some of this stuff because he has actually been involved with it.
So we are here. We've got Dave with us now, and we're going to be talking about possessions, like we'd mentioned earlier. And just for you guys who are not familiar with the topic, I'm sure everyone here has seen a horror movie, and you've seen the gross misinterpretation of what possession actually is. Possession doesn't always mean that you're going to have a pea soup spewing effect occur. You're not always going to see somebody float off of their bed, levitate around the bedroom, and spin like a ceiling fan. It just means that some kind of entity has attached itself to you in a way that is affecting your behavior, your attitude, your well being, just having a negative impact on your life as a whole. It can manifest itself in a way to where it can take control of your body at certain points, or it can just be a type of suppression of a type attack that is bringing you down, dragging you deeper into this sinkhole of depression, anxiety, things like that.
You just
And
described about a quarter of the population of the United States.
right. But what I'm going to get at here is that not all anxiety and depression is
Oh,
possession.
got you. I got you.
Possession is an extremely rare
Or vice
occurrence,
versa.
at least in my experience as a minister. Um, there has been influence. I've seen tons of influence, but very few actual cases of possession. So to not take this topic too lightly or too heavily, we're going to actually take a very introspective look at certain aspects of possession and how they can affect you and how you yourself can overcome them. So, Dave, do you have any kind of experiences that you would like to share? Because I know that you've been investigating the paranormal and Bigfoot and all kinds of other stuff for decades, and I know that we've spoke before, and you've mentioned some certain things where you had been in contact with people who had been possessed. If you're at liberty to talk about any of those, we'd love to have that conversation with you. And then, don't worry about getting too deep into certain details because we don't want to dox these people. So we'll leave names out.
Yeah. Let me see here. Back the one case that really messed me up, other than some personal stuff that I'll get into later on with you. But so years ago, I was like 26, 27 when I was kind of just cutting my investigative teeth, and I was working with some various church personnel. And I got a call one night from the minister, and he needed help with a case they were doing, and they wanted me to film it for them. And this was it was a non-denominational Christian organization that would go and help people that may have had possessions or attachments. All I know was when they called me, they told me to show up at this house. They gave me the address and everything, and what time to be there. So I roll in with my camera and stuff, and as soon as I walk in the door, I hear the most god awful growling sounds and stuff. thinking it's a dog, you know. They stop me before I get into the living room area where they've got this woman basically held to a chair, this old 80-year-old woman, and tell me that this is much, much worse than they thought and all this stuff, and to be prepared. So we did some protection stuff, prayers and whatnot before I went in. They kind of gave me a fair warning of what was going on and everything, and just said, all right, just go set up your camera, stay, 10, 15 feet back and film it. And because they were going to, according to them, it was much worse than they initially suspected. So they wanted to kick this footage up to, if they couldn't do anything for this one, they're going to kick it up to a higher level, straight up exorcist, so to speak. So I go in there, set up my gear and stuff. And there's this little itty bitty woman, probably like 5'2". She's like 80 years old. And there's 5 grown men holding her down. And they are actually struggling. And I'm watching this, trying to set up my camera and my tripod, going, what the frick? Because at this point, I had never seen anything like this. So I get it, set it up, and coming out of this woman's mouth is like, it sounds like multiple voices, speaking in languages I've never heard of. There was a guy there that happened to be fluent, like in some of the Latin and some other things, and he said that's a language that he was not too familiar with either, but he thought that it was Aramaic. This guy had been in the church for many, many years. So long story short, I'm filming this, and this woman is just writhing around. It's all these guys could do was to hold her. The chair was actually trying to come off of the ground, and it was shaking violently, and it was all those guys could do. These are 5 grown men, mind you, holding this woman down. And it got to be so disgusting and so scary. Like I was plugging my ears because I didn't want to hear the noises and the sounds of the growling and the stuff that was coming out of this woman. And we were there for like 2 hours, man. And I was filming. I had to leave the room several times, go out and bless myself and whatnot. And then, after a while, it had seemed to all calm down, and that my part of that was done. And that whole case really terrified me. And all I did was film it for them. And so what I heard from the other guys, that it almost killed the woman, what they did, and she had to go through a whole nother basically an exorcism after that too. So whatever they did, I think, hurt her health wise, like made her very, very sick, and whatever it was that was antagonizing this woman or possessing her or whatever it was, really tried to kill her, according to the preachers and the ministers that were all involved with that. And there was like 4 ministers and a deacon doing this thing, so So my part was just to film it. I was done with it after that. And what I was told later, that she got very, very ill. She almost died, had to be in the hospital, but then they did another main rite of exorcism on her, the whole spiel, and then she was able to come out of it. But it took like a year and a half. So with me personally, I've had some instances over the years that I've did some things that were in some very, very known dark, so-called dark locations. My one book, Wicked 46, was the first book I ever wrote, was a day-by-day journal of what I experienced in a house in Wilkes-Barre, PA. Now, this house was a notorious house. The Warrens had been there many, many years ago, back in the 82, I think it was. And many, many people had died in the house, and there's all these tragic things. Some families would move in, move out, leave all their belongings, that type of situation. What you look for in a real typical haunting, And we had put a team together and ended up renting this place for a month and living in it 24/7, and investigating it almost 24/7, for a month. And then me and the other main guy, we went back to the house 3 more times for 2 weeks at a time. So I spent a lot of time in this really negative environment. This house was really intense. There was constant noise, constant footsteps, constant things happening, people being scratched, people being touched, equipment going nuts. haywire all times of the day. And all the people that were involved in that investigation, especially the first month, one guy didn't last a week and a half. He was a very religious guy. He left crying. A grown man was crying. He said, "It's too evil here. I'm out." Everybody that was involved with that basically never spoke to each other again afterwards, and there was a lot of infighting and crazy stuff going on. And I think with that type of situation, being in such a negative environment, that these entities and these spirits can manipulate you. They can manipulate how you act towards each other and create things that cause internal strife and all kinds of things. And basically, when I wrote that book, I kind of talked about the dangers of paranormal investigating, especially in a case like this, because at the end of that investigation, I had a lot of bad stuff happen to me, and I went through a really bad divorce. I almost went financially ruined, and I found out I had a cancer in my leg that just came out of nowhere. Right after I had this weird spot pop up on my inner right thigh, and it started out like the size of a pea, got a little bigger, and I finally went to the doctor, and he's like, "Oh, you got a mass in your leg." Sent me right up to the ultrasound, and it was a softball-sized thing that came out of nowhere. So,
Wow.
Is it coincidental? Sure. Could it be coincidence? Sure. But when I started having all these things happen to me, because I'm a firm believer that these spirits can affect you spiritually, mentally, and physically. And I learned it the hard way, because the guy that was there, the main guy, the guy that put the team together and asked me to be a part of the team, he was an avid Ouija board user. He constantly tried to conjure dark spirits on purpose. And I was basically there to document evidence. That was what my job was back on that case. And he constantly tried to get me to use a Ouija board, and I would not. And then to the point where we almost came to blows over it. He kept asking me, kept pushing me. And I was like, "Dude, if you ask me again, I'm gonna knock your damn teeth out. Stop asking me, right?" I don't use those things, I just don't. It's just my personal opinion, and I don't like them, So all that stuff happened to me. And when I wrote the book, I decided to write the book as kind of a warning to other investigators that, hey, be careful what you ask for, because you might just get it when you're doing this type of stuff. This stuff can be highly negative. There's famous cases of well-known people out there. Murder-suicides have happened. They were constantly doing EVP sessions in their home, communicating with demons intentionally, or trying to at least. And next thing you know, they have a murder-suicide in their family. And it was them, the married couple. Everybody knows who they are. The Constantinos, very famous case. I've known several other couples. There's another murder-suicide. I've known other people to kill themselves that were paranormal people. So there's a lot of cases out there that I think, when you're constantly delving into this stuff, you are putting yourself at some sort of risk in a way. But if you open doors that you don't know what you're doing, and you're not, whatever your spirituality is, I don't care. As long as you have good intent and you're using it the right way, that is some sort of protection in a sense. But if you're trying to actively conjure negative spirits, the negative entities, demonic, whatever word you want to use, I think that, it's very dangerous. And, you can get an attachment just cruising down the street. I'm not saying you can't get it that way either, but you can also, when you go out there constantly searching for these things, be careful what you ask for, because you might just get it.
Yeah, you gotta be careful what doors you knock on. That's
yeah, absolutely agree. Yes.
one of probably the best examples of that, I believe, is one of the stories that Dave has actually shared with us on here. Dave Roberts, one of the other guys from the crew, and it was where something attached to him
Yep.
just on an investigation. He wasn't
Yep.
asking for anything; it just happened.
Yep.
And it's definitely one of those things that can be problematic, because there's a lot of new people who get into this research all the time, and they go into the field not having any clue really what they're getting themselves into, and they just start doing things willy-nilly, not understanding what is getting ready to happen or what could possibly happen. Some of the most innocent behaviors could lead to certain things happening that you did not ask for.
No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we hear these kind of things constantly. And Joe, one of the big things I think, and you guys agree or no, tell me I'm right or wrong, but I think that a lot of people see this stuff on TV. They think I'm going to go out, I'm going to do this, and it's kind of like fun, right? It's kind of like how the kids used to play with the Ouija board, right, Dave? I mean, isn't that kind of
Yeah.
what we're seeing? It's just a different level of it, but it's kind of the same thing, really.
Well, depending what your spiritual beliefs are, it's all interpersonal too. But
Yeah.
you know, what's the greatest lie that the devil ever told was to convince everyone he didn't exist, right? So these games, these children games, as far as a Ouija board goes, Charlie, all these other, Bloody Mary in the mirror, you can look at it many different ways. But if you follow the Bible and you're a Christian type person, one of the greatest lies the devil ever told was to convince everyone he didn't exist. Oh, it's just a child's game. It's no big deal, right? Well, to finish my story out, like after I figured out I had an attachment after 6 months from this place, I went and got blessed by a Baptist minister, a Catholic priest, and a Native American shaman. And I kid you not, within 2 weeks, everything started turning around. And, you can take it or leave it. I don't really care. It was my experience. That's what I went through, and that's what went down with me. And it really opened my eyes to this broader spectrum of things that, hey, man, this stuff is no joke. And I wasn't even the one using the Ouija board. I was just doing a normal being a normal investigator, filming things, using different equipment. And a lot of people say, well, Ouija board is the same as a spirit box. No, it's not. It's totally different piece of equipment. When you use a Ouija board properly, you're allowing a spirit to use your personal energy to go through you and move that planchette. When you're using a spirit box, they're utilizing a spirit box, or you're using a recorder. They're utilizing or leaving their impressions on that recorder. It's two totally different things. And it's all, this is all opinionated. This is my personal experience after many years of doing this, but take it or leave it, man. I mean, I've seen a lot of crazy stuff, and I've done literally, I could say, upwards of 700-800 residential and business type investigations. And of those cases, I went back one time, and just to see, I went back and the ones that were what I would call negative, where people were getting scratched or they were having horrible dreams every night. Their personal lives were being affected. Their kids were being having horrible dreams, or they would wake up with bruises on their bodies, couldn't figure out where they came from, whatever the case. In 95% of my personal cases, there had been a Ouija board used in that house or by someone in that family at one time or another. So I kind of did, I mean, the numbers don't lie to me, So when you put the numbers like that to it, I mean, it's pretty compelling when you sit there and go, whoa, wait a minute. 95% of all these cases that were negative in nature, which ended up to be about 200, I would say, out of 700 or 800 cases, roughly, were Ouija board related in some way, shape, or form. So, what is that? I don't know, but the numbers would tell you a story there, So
I think understanding the risks is very important when doing this kind of work. Protecting yourself is very important. Psychic and spiritual defense is something that investigators probably need to talk about more often. Michelle Ballinger wrote a really awesome book that is a great place to get started if you want to do any kind of paranormal investigations, and it's the Ghost Hunter's Survival Guide. And it's very, very handy if you're just getting started out in this. I don't want anyone to be discouraged from doing this kind of work because they're afraid that something bad could happen.
Right.
Something bad could happen while you're walking down the street. And I think we need to encourage more people to do this work because it's fun, it's interesting. And the more we have people out there doing it, the more we learn. But I think it's very important that you understand that you must protect yourself spiritually and psychically from any kind of entity that can attach themselves to you. In terms of a Ouija board or a talking board, a lot of people have a lot of issues with them. They're terrified of them. I'm not personally. I use talking boards on a regular basis, but I go through everything that I need to do to protect myself and protect my home before I use that. So I think it's just letting people know that there are ways that you can shield yourself, but there's also risk involved with getting involved in this.
Oh, there's a massive risk, and I don't think a lot of people do realize that. Like Dave was saying, um, the amount of risk is insane. I think that you're dealing with, it could be as simple as what we used to call the psychic vampires. I mean, you've got to be able to shield yourself from this stuff. I mean, Joe and me both worked in a very negative place once, and I have no doubt. Yeah, it's moving, Joe. I have no doubt in my mind that a lot of the issues and strife that was there was generated from the actual place itself. It was just negative, pure negative.
Yeah,
Huh.
we had worked in Ron and I had worked in a facility once together at the same time, and we had weird stuff that would happen there. We had objects that would, well, it wasn't just objects, they were inventory, literal like boxes that are 4x4, square boxes that will find their ways onto the floor from a shelf, and nothing else on the shelf comes down. And we'd have to try to justify that and make sense of it. We would see these shadow entities moving around in the shop. We
Well,
would see,
you would feel it.
you could feel it too. Yeah, you could definitely feel it, but it was 100% negative.
It was all negative. Yeah. And I think it affected everybody who came in there sometimes, guys. I don't know. I mean, I learned, a while back the whole shielding thing. That I think that that's probably one of the most important things that you could do. And you don't take it for granted. You don't underestimate when you're out there doing your investigations. There are certain things when we were with Ghostwatch I wouldn't do. That was one of my things. Is like, you guys got a demonic thing. I'm out. I'm sorry. That's not me. I'll go in and I'll do your EVPs. I'll document this. I'll, like Dave said, I'll do that. I'll do some EVPs and call me if you find an alien or UFO. But when it comes to, no, I'm I'm out, guys. It's just not my
Now,
Yeah.
thing.
don't get me wrong either. When I say negative entities or spirits, I'm not saying a demon. Okay,
Hmm.
Right.
like you said, Joe, that there's very true demonic hauntings are very, very few and
Right.
far between, in my personal opinion, anyway. And if I thought it was truly demonic, guess what? I'm out. It's going to the church clergy or whatever that person's spiritual belief
Faith.
system is to
Hmm.
handle it, because that's, I can do some things, but that for me, that's in a sense above my pay grade, and I would rather someone else deal with that than myself. If I can go in and document and show the church, hey, this is what's going on, and they say, okay, thanks, and they take that footage or that evidence, and that's what they use to make their determination as to what they're dealing with, then hey, I'm all about that. But like I said, 30 plus years of doing this, I've only come across two really crazy things, and one of them had to do with me. So when I had that attachment, and I wouldn't even say it was a possession, so to speak, it was more of an attachment. Something was definitely affecting my life negatively.
Let's explain that, guys. Let's talk about that, because great point, Dave. Not every possession, so to speak, that Hollywood has made it out to be has anything to do with demonic, okay, or diabolical, or something like this. It can simply be something else, like a psychic attachment or something to that nature, right? I mean,
Right.
we could be dealing with something to that kind of a nature is what I'm getting at. So it doesn't necessarily have to be, a demon. It doesn't even have to necessarily be a ghost. It's not great Uncle Bob from the great beyond who's jumped in to give you the family recipe. But, great analogy, I know, Joe. But y- you know, it could possibly be
Speaking of
a
handing off family recipes, there may or may not be a cryptid cookbook lingering around out there that was written by Dave Spinks, and we added some stuff, and Ron did art for us. So
oh, yeah, back there in the background, isn't it? That's right.
Yeah,
there
that
I
might
would.
be some of Dead Uncle Bob's
Was
family
Dead Uncle
recipes.
Bob channeled? Were you channeling Dead Uncle Bob
You
when
never,
you did that?
it's secret.
Okay, well, that's for
It's
another book in the future. So anyway, but we could be talking about extra dimensionals. We could be talking about that kind of stuff too, right, guys? I mean, this isn't
yeah.
necessarily what.
So from
Third
from
dimensional.
uh from a
Oh, yeah.
perspective based off of my My limited understanding, when I say limited understanding, doesn't mean that like I haven't studied this stuff. I mean, I've studied it for like 20 years, but it's still in the scope of an eternal realm, a limited understanding.
Well, Joe, why don't you explain some of your background to the people who are just tuned in and don't know who we even are?
Okay, so
That
for
would be
those of you
good.
who, for those of you who may be new, we're not just I'm not just a podcast host, Bigfoot researcher, weird stuff researcher, chef, and all that stuff. I was a minister for over a decade. I've spent over 20 years of my life working in the church and doing stuff with the church. And based off of my study of the ancient Hebrew texts, as well as the the Dead Sea Scrolls and how they were preserved, and understanding the Hebraic teaching from a rabbinic standpoint, the realm of heaven isn't like, when we look at the sky, we don't, that's not heaven. We look down at our feet, that's not hell. But these two entities, or these two places rather, are just separated from us by a veil. It is a dimension that we literally are existing in the same plane as. It's just, we can't see it. It's all around us. We're breathing it in. The scripture actually says that we're breathing it in, that, when we pray, that we're breathing in the dusts of heaven. And so, we're taking those things in because they're right here. They're as close as your breath. One of the teachings back then was that, when you would pray, you'll see a lot of the, if you watch videos, even current day, of rabbis praying at the Wailing Wall, they're praying right with their hands like this, with their hands cupped, because it reminds them that God is as close to you as your breath. And as they speak, they feel their breath on their hands. And if God is as close to you as your breath, then that means that the dimension, the realm that God inhabits, is as close to you as your breath. So these dimensions, if you will, are all folded on top of one another. There is so much that can happen that has nothing to do with the demonic, but there are other realms where spiritual energy can come from, and it can be negative spiritual energy that can attach itself to you. And that's one of the reasons why I was saying earlier, like David mentioned, that actual demonic possession is extremely rare, in my opinion. I've seen so many people who are afflicted by so many other things that are not demonic. And this isn't me being arrogant or cocky when I say this, but I used to be one of the people that people would call up to go take care of demonic possession. There were several occasions that I walked into the room and immediately said, "Yep, it's not demonic possession. You're going to need something else, because this isn't demonic or spiritual, I don't believe, in any nature." And they're like, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, normally if it's actually demonic, they know who I am, or at least what I am when I come in the room. And there's nothing here. So this person is being afflicted by something."
So what you're saying is it could sense your energy, basically.
Yes, and in the church, they instead of saying sense your energy, what they would then say, they would sense your authority. That's how the church would say it. Was that
Gotcha.
they could sense your authority.
Okay.
But yes, same thing, same
Same
word,
thing. We're talking about the same stuff. Yeah.
Same stuff.
Every good team of investigators should have access. If not have one on their team, they should have a psychiatrist on their team as well.
100%. That's where
Or
I
know
was getting ready to
somebody,
go.
right? Yeah.
You can rule out any type of mental disorder or any kind of schizophrenia, any type of situation going on. You should always find out if the person's on any kind of mind-altering drugs first and foremost when you put them through the initial interview process and everything else. There's very, very few teams that do it right out there. They don't use that type of situation. They just go in and run and gun. If you're dealing with something like that, you have to rule out all other things before you can even start to say, "Hey, this person has an attachment," or this and that. You need to be able to rule those things out and weed through it, some way, some shape or form. So,
and I can't tell.
that's just a good practice of law and that stuff,
I can't tell you how many of those situations that I rolled up on where things were seemingly out of control and people were screaming and praying and doing all kinds of stuff that, was just terrifying the individual that was being done to. That as goofy as this might sound, just giving the person a big, long bear hug fixed and got them to calm down and come into like a position where they would communicate and tell you what was going on. And it happens a lot in the hyper religious community. And then what that would turn into would be me sitting with these people and being like, okay, look, you guys obviously thought that this individual was being afflicted or possessed. Let's sit down. We need to do group counseling. We need to talk. We need to get you guys connected to a pastor that will sit with you and work with you through the whatever is going on. And a lot of the times that would resolve itself at that point. Now, there was one of the craziest ones, actually. I was on a trip in the Dominican Republic, and we were on the Dominican-Haitian border. And we were there during their ritual time of year, or ritual year, rather, where they were rededicating Haiti to whatever spirit that, they call it. Some people call it the devil, some people call it demons, but they were rededicating their island with blood sacrifices and things of that nature.
Papa leg book.
And they were this witch doctor came running at me and one of the other members that were there on the trip, and she had a machete in one hand and a club in the other. And one of the ministers that was there, I just watched him stand out in front of us, and he just stuck his hand out, and she fell to the ground like a 10-ton bag of sand just fell on her. And we just sat there and we prayed for her, and she didn't actually get up and leave. We were there at the ministry site for like 2-3 hours. And then when we left, she was still laying there in the dirt. It was crazy. That was one of the more crazy things that I'd actually witnessed there. But I've seen other people who have shared stories of weird, really, really weird paranormal, almost the act of like these superhuman strength, similar to what Dave was talking about. I've seen that in person. But this one really good friend of mine was in Africa, and this guy who had prayed to be possessed because he wanted to go kill these folks. He needed the strength of whatever being it was that was going to come upon him to go and kill these guys. Went running at him, and when they started praying against this guy, he kept moving towards him and then lifted off the ground himself and flung against a tree. And when he hit the tree, he actually hit the tree so hard that it killed him.
Mm.
And so, I mean, that was just a really, really bizarre, you hear about these possession stories and whatnot, especially that involve ministers. And they're like, oh yeah, and the demon was driven out. No, this guy died. Like, you don't hear that very often. But yeah, it's very odd that, or not odd, but it's very rare that demonic possession or demonic hauntings are authentic. A lot of the times they're thought to be demonic by people who have very little experience in that department. And so they're interpreting bizarre energy and energy that is foreign to them as it must be demonic, because I don't understand anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So they just label it demonic.
Well, I can agree with that. Yeah. We see that in a lot of stuff.
My grandpa was a Baptist minister for 40 plus years after World War II. And like, I tried to talk to him about this stuff, right? And he was an old school fire and brimstone type of dude. And he would not talk to me about it, because in his point of view, if you talk about it, you bring it upon yourself, and I'm like, well, how, my whole question was, so how am I supposed to learn anything if I can't even ask questions about it, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, you got to have faith. That was his answer. And I'm like, that wasn't good enough for me. I
Right.
mean, and I'm talking about the one that I had the whole Bigfoot experience with. He wouldn't talk about it after, just like I talk about in the book. When we stopped and we made that agreement not to tell anyone about it, then that was it. It was open and shut case for him. No more talking about it. And it was so frustrating because we do need to talk about this stuff, because to me, knowledge is power in a lot of ways, right? And the more we know, the better we can help people and help people deal with these type of situations. And we can also help ourselves by learning different techniques and ways to help people when they need it. So I think it's very important, in a lot of different aspects.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's kind of like what Jess was saying. Everybody who's interested in it, all they have to really do is just learn a little bit before they go out there and stick their neck out, because it can be dangerous, right? I mean, that's what it comes down to. It can be. It doesn't mean it will be. I mean,
But it's also really fun.
it's
So
interesting.
you
It'll
know-
make you change your view on things. There's no question.
I wouldn't go out into the woods unarmed, I wouldn't do
It's
that.
the same thing. You
It's the
never go
exact
into the
same
woods
thing.
unarmed, Jesse. You're not unarmed right now.
No, I'm not actually.
I know.
But no, you don't go into the woods unarmed if you really believe that there's something out there. And even if you don't believe that there's a Sasquatch or anything out there or anything like that, it's just the danger of being in the woods. I think a lot of people don't understand how dangerous it is to actually go out into the field and
might
to
not
hike
run into
miles into
Sasquatch.
the woods.
Guys, I grew up in the woods. I mean, my house was literally, Joe's been there. My house was literally in the middle of the woods. And there was not a time that when I went into those woods, I always had my
Absolutely.
little 22 on my side, because I
Absolutely.
never knew what I was going to run into, snakes or anything. Back then I didn't catch them.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but now when we see snakes in the wood, we're like,
Oh
yeah,
my
look at
gosh,
this.
look, it's awesome. It's one of the.
You
Yeah,
become one.
We identify the species, we
Fallen-
document it being there.
So
Yeah,
I just wanted to say that it's important that you have some way to defend yourself, and that's part of what you do. Because the work that we do, we do paranormal investigations, we do cryptid investigations, but we do everything kind of out in the woods. There's been instances where we have had things come home with us, and a lot of time that's referred to as the Hitchhiker Phenomenon.
Mhm.
That these things, whether it be spiritual or cryptid related or anything like that, that they somehow follow you home. And there are more and more documented instances of this going on right now from official sources.
Mhm.
So there is people who are very high up in the government who are talking about UAP disclosure right now, who are also talking about the Hitchhiker Phenomenon and things attaching themselves and following you home. So this is a lot bigger and it's the whole dynamic of this possession or this attachment concept is really expanding and getting bigger and bigger as we think about it and more people get into the field. But like I said, it's important to have a lot of different things in your kit, especially if you're doing this kind of work. Like I said, when we go out into the woods and we are going into dangerous areas, we're always armed. We do a lot of preparation when it comes to going out because we don't know what we're encountering when we go and do these investigations. So we prepare ourselves spiritually, psychically, and something else we've also added to our kit, which I have here, is we actually, when we go out, we also, in our kit, in our backpacks, we also carry holy water and blessed black salt. And then we usually have a rosary on us at any given time too. So we're going out there with cameras and guns and holy water. But I think it's kind of a good thing to prepare yourself, protect yourself, and kind of cover all of your bases, because you can infer what you're dealing with, or come up with a narrative of what you're dealing with, but the reality is, no matter where you are, whether it be a haunted house or out in the woods or something like that, we don't have enough data to determine what we're experiencing, what we're seeing, what we're hearing, what we're documenting there, what that actually is. So no matter what kind of work you do in the paranormal space, I think it's really important to be prepared for any eventuality.
Well, it's like what Dave.
Not need it, then I need it and not have it, man.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, what you just said, Dave. What you said when you had your experience. You went and you talked to what was it? Native American. You went and talked
Yeah.
to the priest. I mean, you covered all
Yeah.
bases, right?
Yeah. Well,
Because
because I didn't really know what I was dealing
yeah,
with because it had all these different layers at that particular location. It had Native American layers. And it had
mhm,
there was deaths and murders in that house and suicides too. So I'm like, man, I'm covering the whole gambit if I can, just to be
yeah,
safe, and it worked. You know, I mean, when your whole life kind of flips upside down, you can't figure out why, and then one day the light bulb goes on. Well, hey, wait a minute, this all happened after that case. Hmm.
yeah. So, do you think that it could have something to do with possibly? I call it energy, but vibrational frequencies that something like that. Like, is
Well,
that what?
yeah. So with these, with the way I look at haunted locations, okay,
Mhm.
in a broad spectrum, is a place. Say it has all these tragic incidents, whether it's suicide, murder, whatever. I truly feel that type of energy stains the very ground, and the actual building or whatever it is stains that forever. And that energy, and until it's cleaned properly, if it can be even clean, it can be knocked down. We know that. We know we can knock it way down and way back. But I feel that stuff's there for a long time because that energy, we all know energy. It doesn't just dissolve and leave. It just transpires and goes other places, right? Like when we die, our soul doesn't disappear, it goes somewhere, right? It transforms into a different, you know, transcends into a different form of energy and goes to wherever it goes, or if we're reincarnated or whatever you believe in, but energy never just goes away, you know.
Well,
So in my point of view,
they've actually done scientific research on this negative energy where they've put plants like house plants
mhm,
in these places where there is just negative energy, and it
Yes,
affects
that's
the
a
plant
good
on a
point.
cellular level.
Yep.
If it's able to affect a plant on a cellular level, if this negative energy can affect a plant, you can imagine that it is going to have effects on every other type of living organism. We're just a really big living organism. We
yeah,
have there's minor differences between the cells of a human and a plant. We're all going to be affected by this energy in one way, form, especially long-term exposure, like what you had experienced, Dave, when you rented that house for a month. You talked about the negative experiences that followed you afterwards, the friendship that decayed after what happened there. um, it can have long-standing side effects if things aren't dealt with accordingly, and like Jesse was saying, you've got to constantly protect yourself. you know always be one Winchester shy of a TV show. have e-
yeah,
have have every
Okay, so I did have to
It's good.
mention this since you mentioned that. It basically we were talking about this earlier that me and Joe, I guess Joe's like the Dean Winchester of the outfit here. So, but yeah, because Joe was raised Catholic. Joe was Irish. His grandmother immigrated from Ireland, and she raised him Catholic. So Joe was raised Catholic. So he has rosaries, and he's very very Irish Catholic. So he handles a lot of that portion of that. But yeah, it's gotta you've got to protect yourself, and it's basically, yes, it is basically like being a Winchester at this point.
And one of the things that my mentor in ministry, Chad Waller, if you're listening, because I know you listen to the podcast occasionally, you'll be proud to hear me say this. One of the best things that we could possibly do is just, if you come into an environment that has this negative energy, if you're seeing somebody who's being affected by this negative energy, is to literally just love the hell out of them. Bring the positive energy, bring the impact of positivity and the impact of good energy into their life, and neutralize whatever it is that's wrapped them up. It's that simple. That's why I
So,
was saying earlier with some of these instances where I was being called out to go and pray for somebody who's being possessed. I would literally just go up to him, give him a big bear hug, and love on him, and it settled him down. It got him out of there like crazed that was going on. And then they were able to communicate with us what they were feeling. And a lot of the times it was just pent up feelings that they couldn't express, and they had taken and bottled up and bottled up. And the more it pressurized, it was just like a carbonated drink in a soda can. As soon as that pop tab erupted, it went bonkers. And all the negative energy in them blew out and mixed with the negative energy that they were already surrounded with, and it created this black hole of negativeness, and it just needed something to come in and neutralize it. And you can be that neutralizing factor. You can go in and have this positive vibration, this positive energy, this supernatural uplifting ability, and go in and change the entire environment that you're in. And it's possible. It's easy. You just have to be ready. You have to be prepared. You have to be prepared to go out and do this stuff. Be protected spiritually and psychically, like Jess was saying, and bring it all together into one piece.
So would you think that you would say then that your attitude plays a massive role in possibly the outcome of what's going to happen and what you may experience then?
Well, yeah, in my opinion, because if you go in with a negative attitude, or if you go in with an aggressive attitude, if you go in there like, oh, we're going to beat this thing down spiritually, we're going to take it and drag it out. No, just don't do that. You're feeding the already negative, already aggressive energy that's in the room. You're just adding on to that. You're multiplying what's already there, and you're going to try to meet that aggression instead of neutralize the aggression.
So some of this stuff could happen, right, Joe, when some of these ghost hunters go in and they kind of try to draw out these things, or they challenge things.
Ghost
what do you
bouncers.
think about that? Yeah, what do you think about that, guys? I mean, I'll go with you first on that, Dave. What do you think?
I'm not going to say I'm not guilty of that back in my early days.
Back in your early days, right.
Because the way I looked at it, so especially when it comes to prisons and stuff, because I was in law enforcement. So the way I learned over the years, you kind of develop your own techniques of trying to communicate with spirits, right? So, when we go to some of these old prisons and stuff, so we go in hardcore and, pretty much provoke. That didn't turn out too well. So you kind of learn as you go. Now, I found what works the best is you only give what you get. So if they come at you hardcore and there maybe someone's getting scratched in your group, or there's some negative type stuff going on, then you kind of give it back a little bit and let them know, hey, this is my space. You're not allowed to touch me, whatever the case, you kind of give it back the same amount, and that works best. Like, you're not going to go into an orphanage where tragic children deaths occurred and go in there hardcore. Each location is different, right? So you got to know where you're at, what went on there in some aspect to know what you're trying to deal with and what you're trying to communicate with. Now you see these dudes on TV and they're constantly provoking and attack me now. Well, I'm telling you, man, you start doing that stuff, you're just asking for major problems, and it's going to happen, at some point, and it can happen without even doing that.
Or you could end up with a museum and a Corvette, so you never know.
True.
Accurate.
But I mean, I just speak off of what I've observed. I can't speak for others and what their experiences are, just off my own personal experiences and whatnot. I don't think there's a right way and a wrong way to do things. I just speak off of my own personal experiences, if that makes sense.
Perfect sense.
So
yeah.
I'm not going to tell someone, hey, you're doing it wrong, because there is no set way of doing this, man. I mean, let's be honest here. If you want to mess with Ouija boards and you feel comfortable doing that, hey, go for it. I don't recommend it, but that's just off my personal experiences and whatnot. If you want, you want to provoke, hey. And I used to do it because I thought if I would provoke in a certain atmosphere, that I might elicit a better response. Or, that's, when you talk to inmates, for example, they're only going to give you respect. You have to earn that respect. Okay. They're going to test you. They're going to be like, this guy's a wimp or whatever, because I can't say other words, but on your show, but they're going to say, hey, they're going to test you. And if you don't let them know that you're not taking no crap, so to speak, then you might get a response. You might earn that respect to a point that, hey, you're not going to talk to me like that. You're not going to touch me. You're not going to scratch me. You're not going to invade my personal space. If there's a message you need to get out or something you want to say, now's your chance. Just each situation's different, and that's just based off my own personal experience. Like a battlefield, all those dudes in the prime of their lives charging that hill, and most of them were killed instantly and didn't even know what happened. They might not even know they're dead. That's why in my opinion, that's why you may have a haunting going on there. Their spirit is just wandering because they still think they're in their body, so to speak. And there's so many different ways you can run with this stuff. I mean, it's like a giant onion and it has many layers. You got to peel back, try to figure it out, and go from there.
Well, yeah. I mean, like I said before, we may not be dealing with anything ghostly or demonic. This may be just an extra dimensional something or another. This has happened in conjunction with Bigfoot sightings too, right, guys? I mean,
Yeah.
Pennsylvania, the Chestnut Ridge, 1973. I mean, there's a great example.
And not just that, but people who have had experiences in the woods where they've witnessed a possible Bigfoot and lived 2-3 hours away and have something follow them and show up at their house.
Okay, yeah. Go into this because I find this very fascinating about Bigfoot in general. I have seen a lot of cases where these guys will go out. They're flesh and blood guys, by the way. They don't believe any of the other stuff. And they'll go out, they'll do their thing, and then all of a sudden they're in a world of what in the world? That's everything starts changing, right?
Right. Some of these folks, they go out and they have these experiences in the woods, and then suddenly these experiences will follow them home.
This is the Hitchhiker Phenomenon.
It is. This is part of the Hitchhiker Phenomena. And they will hear slaps on the side of their house, or they'll be outside at night and they'll hear whoops and they'll hear howls, and they don't see anything exactly because it's always coming from just beyond the edge of the light or just beyond the edge of their eyesight. Or they'll be indoors. That's when you hear the house slaps. You'll hear some big loud thump hitting your house or your trailer or camper. And it rattles the whole building or whole house, and there's no explanation for this for them because they've never had Bigfoot activity around their home, but now they're experiencing it. So this goes in, the Hitchhiker Phenomena is one of the things that's really fascinating to me, because it's the same thing with other types of research. We have a friend of ours who has sent in dozens of reports for UFO sightings. They've experienced a light in the sky while they were driving, and now suddenly they're seeing them all the time outside their home.
Mm-hmm.
So how this is just some big, massive, tangled bowl of spaghetti. Is what
a lot of times, the more you open yourself up to these things, so say you have an experience, the more you open yourself up to these things, a lot of times they are drawn to you at that point. You almost become a magnet for more things to happen to you, more experiences, and it's all of a sudden it goes from one experience to 15, like 0 to 50 very quickly, because now you're opened up to it and now it's just coming at you.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would agree with that too. And the whole story about that, Joe,
right.
Back when I was conducting my research, this is when things started picking up because, I think Wayne always said, well, you opened the door. That's the way he looked at it. And I kind of get that. I really do. I think that's kind of what it is. And we go and do these things. We're out there. And it's like, do we look like we're shining a light to some of these things, in a multispectral kind of universe,
Oh, yeah. I think, too, like, based off my experiences over the years, like she was talking about, that the more you do this, the more your senses become heightened. Like I can literally, and you guys can probably do it too. I'm sure you can vouch for this. When you walk into a place, whatever it may be, it might be just the woods, almost immediately you feel that energy. If it's heavy, if it's mad or sad or whatever, you can pick up on that. Your body is your best antenna, in my opinion. I mean, it's your best piece of equipment. I mean, I don't know how many times I've been in the woods and the hair on the back of my neck will stand up and I'm like, man, something's watching me right now. And you can literally feel it, And going back to my case real quick, I forgot to tell you guys. So after I came home from the very last day of investigating that house, speaking of being followed. So I'm sitting in the house watching TV, kicking back, and all of a sudden I hear that sound of a light bulb popping. We all know what that sounds like pow, that pop sound. And so I get up and I'm like, okay, I had a light bulb blew. I checked every freaking light bulb in the house. All of them were fine. And then I began smelling an electrical smell followed by the smell of straight up feces. And then that's when everything just went bad. So, take it for what it's worth. I don't know what it was, but it was not good. It was negative, very negative. And that was my experience of a hitchhiker, so to speak. So it was not fun, trust me. Along with many crazy dreams every night, culminating into the last night where something grabbed a hold of me. And then that's when I went and sought help. But yeah, you can, and there's so many cases too that we've all looked at, even when in the Bigfoot world and UFO world, that cross over into each other. So I've done several cases over the years where people were reporting poltergeist type activity in their home. I've gone in there, and then out of nowhere they say, "Oh yeah, every night I'm having these dreams of these little aliens, and I'm floating up to my ceiling." And I had several cases like that over the years that people would report this later on. So, and I was like, "Well, you didn't think to tell me that in the beginning when I interviewed you?" "Oh no, it just popped into my head. I just remembered it." So these things are crossing over. How many times have we heard the stories of a rash of Bigfoot sightings along with a rash of strange lights in the sky, or vice versa as well over the years? You can even trace some of the more well-known cases of Bigfoot sightings where there's a whole rash of sightings in an area, and then if you cross-reference it, lo and behold, look up, there's a lot of strange lights in the sky too. So what's going on here? Just like Joe said, it's a giant bowl of spaghetti, and we're all dipping our freaking feet and hands into it, trying to figure out what the heck's going on here.
Eventually, one of us is going to grab the same noodle, and it's going to come out of the bowl, and we're going to be like, "Oh God, these are connected."
No, for real. What you just said.
Yeah.
And I've talked about that forever. A lot of this stuff is interconnected. It all seems to be related. There's something here that's a core that just seems to permeate through all of it and connect it all together. They may be separate events, but they may be utilizing the same energy or the same, principle of their own type of physics, I guess, or metaphysics. I don't even know what it's called. We're making up words
Jeff
because that's
touched
what
on it
humans
earlier
do.
when she was talking about how this stuff is interconnecting too, and I think it's very important as investigators that we step outside the box, because how long ago was it? It wasn't that long ago. You couldn't say Bigfoot and UFO in the same sentence. You were either a Bigfoot guy or you're a UFO guy, or you're either a paranormal guy or you're a Bigfoot guy or girl, whatever.
You get ran out of whatever circle you were in if that was the case.
Right. And it wasn't that long ago, but now people are realizing, man, there's something else going on here with a lot of these cases. Not all of them, but there's a lot that cross over that we have to, as investigators, you got to step outside that normal box, so to speak, and take a look from the outside in and go, what am I missing here? What are we missing here? What's going on?
Well, yeah, Dave, and we've talked about this before. Everything on the table, right? I mean, it's the same thing. You can't just filter out these things. So we have to look at everything. And if you do get somebody who's having these kind of attachments, and they do have a history of UFO sightings, Bigfoot sightings, or maybe they're out there playing around in the TNT bunkers. I don't know. But what I'm saying is, you got to look at it. It doesn't matter, no matter how uncomfortable it may be to your particular belief system, I guess. And then you know how I feel about those. I'm not talking about religious belief systems, guys. I'm talking about belief systems, as in the thing that drives us and makes us think that we know. We don't know any of this. None of us are experts. That's a title that you will not see under any of our names. Okay, we're not experts. We experience these things, and that's how it goes. I mean, we're all looking for the same answers, right? I mean, really, that's what it's all coming down to.
I tell you what fascinates me too is one of the things I try to look into, in some aspects, is what causes these attachments, what causes these, why is one person why does this guy over here have a possession type scenario or an attachment versus someone who doesn't? What is the cause? What's the root cause going on here? We'll never know that answer, I don't think. But, me and Jen a lot, we talk about people that have holes in their soul, so to speak, like they had a childhood trauma, or maybe they have a drug addiction or an alcohol abuse problem. So that creates a window for, say, a negative spirit or a spirit that wants to experience that earthly bound pleasure once again by being in a body. Maybe that is something that we need to look at, as it enables them to jump in and take over. How many people do we know that have been on drugs or on alcohol, and they've done some of the craziest stuff they would have never done if they were drinking? Could you say it was just alcohol? Sure, but what else is going on here? I always use that analogy. They don't call it spirits in a bar for no reason. Wine and spirits. Get it? I mean, what's going on here?
That's a good point, Dave.
There's all kinds of scenarios that we could look at outside the normal realm of investigating too, just for what, just to do it, because that's what we're looking for. We're looking for answers. So,
well, one of the things, before we start to wrap up here, one of the things I think with any kind of, I guess, thing that you could take into your body is it just lowers the perception wall.
Lowers your frequency too. You got people with high frequency, like you said, that are positive, and you have people that are lower frequency. So is that a cause of something? Yeah, I think so.
And anytime that you become less aware, you become kind of more aware or more attuned, maybe. Like once all the windows that you normally keep open in your mind, or even you normally keep closed, rather, the windows you normally keep closed, you can open those windows up if you lower your inhibitions, so to speak.
Yeah.
And those things that might never be a problem for you might suddenly be an issue. But
I'll tell you, to me, I think it just comes down to this. It's ancient, whatever it is,
Yeah.
You can call it what you want to call it, but whatever it is, it's ancient. And if we look at the facts are it's something that affects our psychology. It's something that affects us physically as well, like Dave said. And it's ancient. It has existed beside probably the first humans. This is not something new. It's not a product of psychology or our environment, I don't think. I think those things can affect it, but I think that there is definitely something there. There's an external force or an external sentience, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. It's not necessarily on your head. That's what I'm trying to say. This seems to be something very real. It's not imagined, and it affects a lot of people. So I don't know what it is, guys, but it is definitely something that deserves to be looked at. We need more data on it. Of course, just like everything else we study, we need more data on it.
Didn't Jess say that the cases are on an uptick according to certain clergy and experts, or something to that effect early on?
I was referring to the Hitchhiker Phenomenon in the with the UAP disclosure. So you've got a couple of reports and books that have come out lately that talk about that this is on an uptick with all of this disclosure going on, that there are people that over the past few years have experienced this phenomenon and are experiencing paranormal phenomenon after experiencing UAP activity.
Right.
Oh, 100%. I can see that. And another thing about the whole uptick could also be, like I said, these people see this stuff, they watch it on TV. I'm going to go try that. I'm going to go grab me a K2 meter and go out and, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to antagonize ghosts in the graveyard. Probably not the smartest thing to do if you don't know what to do before you pick up that piece of
also
equipment,
a lot of people
right?
a lot of people are spiritually and mentally very, very vulnerable right now because there's a lot of turmoil in the world. And a lot of people, the mental illnesses have skyrocketed. So when somebody is at a weakened point or a weakened state, it's easier for these things to kind of creep into their lives. So I think that contributes to it as well.
I think you're 100% right. And I think that Dave's right. I think we're all right about that. Negativity begets negativity. And that kind of seems to be what feeds some of this stuff, right?
And anger leads to hate. Hate leads to fear. Fear leads to the dark side.
Yes, Master Yoda. So, yes, you're right, though. I mean, that is the basic principle. And what you had said, Joe, was, love and you just go in and give these people hugs. That's higher frequency. That's higher energy. You know, these are words that a lot of people think, oh, no, that's new age talk. Is it? I don't think it is. I think that
Actually,
we are energy.
Well, guys, we're coming up here on a time wall, and I do not want to let Dave go without giving him a chance to tell us about what is getting ready to happen here in about a month in the very place that he's setting.
yeah, the West Virginia MonsterCon 2022, first one ever. Doing a lot of hard work trying to get it up and running, and first one we're gonna have. We already got people booking for next year, so I'm super stoked about it. So just a running gun on this one to see how it goes. The whole town's behind it, which is really cool. So we got several awesome speakers, such as you guys and several others. We've got Eric Altman, we got Frank Bennett, the Aberdeen Wildman story. We've got Teresa's haunted blog here. This is mostly West Virginia folks on this first one, and people right on the border. So it's the first go at it. I'm super stoked at it. We got people coming from North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Tennessee, Kentucky, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and of course West Virginia, and even some folks from Missouri are coming. So, got all day speakers Saturday, Friday night's VIP event, Sunday, Saturday is also vendor tables, and Sunday's vendor tables. We have psychic readings going on here in Jen's side, and we got a really awesome astrologer coming who blew me away. And I'm very leery on that stuff, guys. And when they start telling me stuff, there's no way in hell they could know. I'm just like, wait a minute, you're tripping me out right now. So,
oh no, Dave, you got a book behind you that tripped me out. So as far as that goes, just say.
Yeah, the store's going really good. It's far exceeded my expectations already, and it's just what we do when we go to these conferences on a much grander scale anyway. And we have, it's my office, home away from home office. I'm going to be running Bigfoot hunts right out of the store here, expeditions, and taking the public out, showing some of the equipment, letting them do their thing. We're going to have a ghost walk here in the summer based off some of the old town hauntings here in Richwood. And you guys will be doing some track casting classes here for the kids and all kind of fun stuff. It's just a lot of work that's coming, and going to keep on going.
This is so cool because Dave is doing exactly what we had always talked about, paratourism.
Yep.
And trying to get the word out. And, between what you're doing, Dave, and what, we're doing over here, goodness. I mean, hopefully we can put West Virginia back on the map as what it really is.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's one of the things. We have it all here, man. I mean, look how many cryptids we have alone in West Virginia. It's disgusting compared
to everybody's favorite cryptid is from West Virginia. I don't care what they say. They're from West Virginia. Somehow or another, the Fresno Nightcrawlers are from West Virginia. We're gonna figure it out. Right. The fabric that was made for those pants was probably made in West Virginia. And
that's good.
The ufology type things that have happened here are mind blowing too. And back in the 60s, West Virginia was considered the UFO capital of the world.
Yes.
Yeah, the very first UFO Congress was held here in Charleston, West Virginia, by none other than the great Gray Barker.
Right. So people don't realize that, I mean, they really don't realize all the wild and strange stuff we have here in this state. And, that's one of our jobs. We talked about this how many years ago when I met you guys.
Yeah. Oh, gosh, yeah.
We're going to try to put the Mountain State back on the map where it should be in the first place. And it's already on the map, but not done by native West Virginians like it should be. And that's what we're trying to do. So
I agree. Absolutely agree.
That's I'm helping this town. It was a small dying town, USA, like we talk about, especially here in our state. It's, these little small towns, man, they're going away.
It's rough.
Can't let that happen.
Yeah, it is. So, it's a cool town too. It's such a cool town full of a lot of history,
Well, it was lumberjack town, and the high school mascot's a lumberjack, and coal mining, of course, and
yep.
That's what this town thrived on. It was a boom town in the late early 1900s, and now it's just almost gone. But now, guess what? It's slowly coming back. We got some cool restaurants. We got some new B&Bs. We got my store. We've got an art gallery now, like a new age art gallery. It's really awesome. Cool. Some of the artists they've been having in there are really good. We've got a Pulitzer-winning prize novelist here in town now. Just some really cool stuff. And I'm happy to be a small part of that, and I can't wait for you guys all come check it out.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
That
man,
little-
we can't wait to be there.
The restaurant right across from Dave, by the way, has
It's great.
some of the best local burgers there that you're going to find. Okay, this
Oh,
is
that's-
on,
Yeah.
it's on our
Ron,
list.
you're just like me. It's like everywhere. All right, so we're going here, but listen, we got to talk about
Yes.
the food. Okay, we gotta
Yes.
talk about where
Yep.
are we eating?
Yes.
Well, that's the cool part of it. All the restaurants, like the 3 or 4 main restaurants, are making like special dishes, like Bigfoot burgers for the conference. They're all behind
Yes.
it. We'll have one of the bars. We'll have Braxy beer, Sasquatch beer, and Mothman beer from the Greenbrier Valley Brewing Company here in West Virginia.
Nice.
They'll have it on tap and in cans. So they're all getting behind it. So it's really cool. And it's just going to be a good time.
We can't
The vendor tables and stuff will be in the gym here, and the high school band will be running concessions for that too. So all the vendors and speakers will be taking care. You want snacks and food, you can get it right there. You don't have to go anywhere while you're at your table. So it's going to be a cool deal. And of course, as we all know, when you do a first conference run, you're gonna have to work out the kinks and see what dates work better and the weather's involved and everything, but we're having everything inside. But it's going to be cool, man. So
It's going to be cool. It's going to be very cool. And you'll be able to see Dave at Wild and Weird Con this year too, as well. So, there's that. I mean, the whole point is let's try to get West Virginia on that map again.
Jen speaking, you guys, Eric Altman, Frank Bennett, Teresa, Bear and the Night Stalkers are coming from Kentucky. He's a native West Virginian too. So he wrote a piece in my UFO book that we're working on, Ron, the one me and you are working on too, the new edition. So
Revised,
he goes way back.
You can actually talk about your revised edition. I'll put up a picture of the new cover here for you.
So it's just what I was trying to do with it is show everybody the major ufology events that happened here in West Virginia going back from the 1800s.
That's right.
And that's the old edition.
That's the old edition. So this will be changed.
So Ron's added some cool, several new cases to it. And we've got Dr. Ray. Dr. Ray's another speaker. He was a PhD at WVU for 40 plus years and writes some killer book. He was good friends with Gray Barker and all kinds of people, man. He's going to be here speaking. He's writing a piece for that new revised edition of the book. And I'm hoping we can get it out, but the timeline's pretty slim on that before the conference, but it'll be out right around there sometime. So what I was trying to do is just show people, hey, there's a major connection between modern ufology and West Virginia, man. I mean, right after the Flatwoods Monster incident, we had a government-funded project built here called the Green Bank Observatory, where they're still actively looking for ET today. The Frank Drake and Carl Sagan started SETI right here in West Virginia. It was right here. There's no coincidence in all that, man. So, read the book, guys. If you're into UFOs, I think it'll open your eyes, because a lot of this stuff's been swept under the rug when it comes to West Virginia and modern ufology. So, it's pretty interesting stuff.
Well, Dave, thanks for joining us tonight. It's been great having you on. Jess, go ahead and sign us out.
All right, guys, thank you so much for watching our humble little show. We want to thank Dave for joining us tonight and giving us his insight on all things possessions. And I guess you guys, let's go ahead and rattle off all of our little socials. That way anybody can follow us. Make sure, before we get into that you like, subscribe, and share this episode. And stay tuned next week for another exciting episode of Wild and Weird Radio. Go to the Facebook group and tell us your stories about orbs. And if you have any cool photos or videos or anything like that, next week we're going to be talking orbs. So get on the Facebook group, get in touch with Joe, Ron, or myself, and let us know about any kind of stories or encounters you've had with orbs for next week's episode. We really want to hear from you. Again, like, subscribe, and share the show. That's the best way to get the show out to everybody else. That gets our numbers up, that gets us in front of more people, and that's the only way we're going to share the wild and weird world. So you can follow me on Instagram at HellbentJessie. You can find me on YouTube at HellbentHoller, and you can go to my website, hellbentholler.com. Joe, where can we find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Skinwalker Sculpts, and then you can find Ron over on Instagram under
I don't even know, guys. I'm just
It's
there.
Lanham Ron.
Lanham
Oh,
Ron.
it is.
It's Lanham Ron.
I'm just kidding, you guys.
But
Yeah, it's Lanham Ron, and there's some stuff there. You can go over to the Instagram. You'll get to see more things that I do that don't involve, UFOs. Sometimes, I mean, sometimes they do, but you'll get to see some of my art and whatnot as well. So that's kind of a neat behind the scenes kind of thing.
but if you want to find, oh, sorry.
Thanks, Dave.
All right. Oh, baby, It's my fault.
If you want to find just everything in general wild and weird, head on over to wildandweirdwv.com and you can find all of our links there, including Hellbent Holler right there, and you can get hooked up, like, share, subscribe, it all. And remember, if you don't, there's some
dear.
random spirit that's just out there that's not going to be able to get attached to whatever creature it needs to drain its energy, and that's the last thing that we want. Actually, please don't like that. Just like, share, subscribe. That'd be great, guys. I don't have any arms of the angels for this episode tonight.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, go check out Dave Spinks' World of Weird and stay wild and weird.